Baltimore. A bookshop, 1826. A boy lays 50 cents on the counter, boot polish still dark under his nails. The shopkeeper slides one volume across the wood, the Columbian Orator. A man fills the doorway, hat dripping rain. "You know the law on a boy like you reading," he says. Quiet, almost kind. Set it down. Nobody saw. The boy's fingers close on the spine. He opens to the first page. He reads one line aloud, even, unhurried. The man steps in to take it back. His hand stops mid-air. The boy reads the second line. Behind the boy's eyes, something has already locked into place, and there is no key on this earth that turns it back. The man's hand hangs there, 3 inches from the page. The frame holds. My coffee went cold at 6014 every morning. I counted 31 cracks in the ceiling. I kept an old phone on the table. It held one missed call from a Tuesday 30 years gone, from the kid who quit dialing my number and never said why. Possessions leave on a schedule. The voice you wait for does not. Guard the one line no creditor can repossess. They came for the house first, on a Thursday. The firm followed 11 weeks later. My account closed at 1,847 and change. The men in clean shoes carried 31 years of work out in 4 cardboard boxes, and my hands would not stop shaking against the doorframe. A balance sheet records every loss but one. Inventory, what they cannot lift. That total stays yours. I am not a philosopher. I signed death certificates for bankrupt companies for 31 years. I watched the rigged machine eat decent people up close. Then at 54 it ate me, and I learned the difference between a man who is ruined and a man who is finished. Ruin is an event. Finished is a verdict you sign yourself. Refuse to hold that pen. A boy shined boots on a Baltimore dock in 1827. He saved 50 cents, coin by coin. He spent every cent on one book. In Maryland that year, teaching an enslaved boy his letters was a crime the law punished, so he taught himself in stolen minutes between errands. They wrote statutes against the alphabet. That is how dangerous a reading mind was to them. Learn what they forbid. The lock was never on the door. It was on the page. Keep a man from letters, and you keep him from arguments. A field hand who cannot read a pass, cannot forge one, cannot read a map, cannot read the lie printed above his own name. Control begins as a curriculum you are denied. The first theft is always your access to thinking. Take it back quietly. I have watched locksmiths work. They never force the metal. They listen to it. A good one reads the pins like a sentence, feeling for the one that gives, because every lock is a small argument about who gets to enter. Illiteracy is a lock built to open only from outside. The boy was learning to pick it from within. Study the mechanism before you fight it. He was hungry. He bought the book anyway. 50 cents was 2 days of food. He chose the Columbian Orator over his own stomach, and the men who owned him never tallied that hunger as a threat. They counted his labor, never his attention. What that book did to the inside of his skull comes later, and it unwound every chain they trusted. Feed the part that lasts. The Columbian Orator, printed 1797. A schoolbook of speeches and debates. One dialogue stages a slave answering his master, point for point, until the master frees him by the force of the argument alone. The boy read a captive win freedom with sentences, not fists, and saw his own situation rewritten as a case he might argue. Words were the file hidden in the cake. Hide one, too. Each sentence he decoded rewired something. A neuron fires, finds a partner, holds the grip. Reading lays new track through tissue that obedience had worn smooth, and a path once cut does not fill back in on command. For a moment, in a dark loft, the only sound was a boy's lips moving over print. The wiring changed in silence. What rewires in private cannot be confiscated in public. I could read a balance sheet in the dark. I read leases, liens, liquidation orders. I read every number that ever mattered to a bank. For 31 years, I never once read myself, never audited the man signing the papers, never asked what the figures were costing the person holding the pen. Fluency in everything but yourself is a special kind of blindness. Open the ledger you avoid. I signed the death certificate of 47 companies. I never saw my own coming. The numbers on my firm were screaming by Q3. I read them as somebody else's emergency, filed them, went home, and let the same arithmetic that killed my clients quietly close around my throat. A man who will not read his own life outsources the verdict. Do your own reading first. The machine runs smoothest on people who do not think. It prefers reactions to readers. A workforce that skims, scrolls, and forwards is one that signs without the fine print, votes against its own ledger, obeys the loudest feed. Distraction is not an accident of the system, it is the product. The unread mind is the cheapest thing to govern. Refuse to be inventory. My losses had a number. I knew it to the dollar, 2,300,000, gone in 14 months. I treated that figure as the size of my ruin for years. Then I found a dead emperor's private notebook in a liquidated box, and one line in it repriced the entire debt down to almost nothing. What Marcus wrote, and why it changed the math, lands soon. Hold that thought. A boy in 1827 chained by law. A man in 2019, free on paper, broke and silent in a rented room. We sat against the same wall, 92 years apart. His lock was iron and statute. Mine was the story I kept reading about myself, the one where I was finished. The bars differ. The faculty behind them is identical. Find out which lock is actually yours. There is a part of you that issues the orders. The Stoics named it the hegemonikon, the ruling faculty. Not the hands, not the eyes, the thing that decides what the hands and eyes mean. Marcus told himself it was the one possession no one outside could touch, the single asset with clear title in a life of seized things. Everything else is on loan. Govern the governor. Marcus Aurelius ran an empire from a war tent, mud, plague, 8 years on the Danube frontier. The most powerful man alive, and every night he sat down to discipline the one province that kept rebelling, his own head. He wrote the notes to himself, never for us. Power over the world meant nothing without command of the thing giving the commands. Start the war, you can win. The boy read the speeches by candle and theft. He memorized the cadences of free men arguing. Sentence by sentence, the idea that bondage was permanent began to look like a claim, not a fact, and a claim is something a trained mind can answer. He did not yet have a road north. He had something prior, a head that no longer believed the walls. Dispute the claim first. Marcus called the mind a citadel. Lay siege to a man's body, you still cannot enter it. The fortress has no outer gate. The only door opens inward, and the one who holds it stands inside. They could chain the boy's wrists and never reach the room where he was reading. Walls keep out what you refuse to admit. Stand watch at your own door. My seizure inventory ran 3 pages. House, car, 2 accounts, a watch I still wear. The appraiser logged every object down to the lamp. There was one asset he walked straight past, never wrote down, never priced, and it turned out worth more than the other 3 pages combined. What that unlisted line was, and how I cashed it, comes shortly. Watch for the omission. Epictetus was born a slave. His master shattered his leg. He limped the rest of his life. That broken man became the teacher emperors quoted, because he proved a thesis with his own body. Chains reached the legs, never the faculty that judges. He owned nothing and answered to everyone, and he was freer than the men who held his lease. Status does not set the ceiling. Train regardless. Watch a locksmith pick a lock. A wrench holds tension below. The pick finds each pin to the line. He sets them one by one, and when the last gives, the cylinder turns and the lock is simply open. Reading sets the pins of a mind. The boy turned his own obedience over, and no one repins a lock that has learned its shape. Once seen, it cannot be unseen. I read my collapse the way I once read Pliant's files. Code, line by line, no flinching at the totals. I went back through 14 months of decisions and marked which losses the market dealt me and which ones I authored myself, signature and all. Half the ruin was weather. Half was a man not paying attention. Audit your wreck before you blame the storm. Every accountant splits assets into 2 columns, owned and owed. The Stoics ran sharper books, what answers to your will and what never will. Epictetus called the first prohairesis, the power of choice, and he insisted it was the only entry on the sheet that was truly, unconditionally yours to spend. The market is not in your column. Your verdict on it is. Balance the right ledger. I still keep the old phone charged. 1 missed call sits in it, dated 3 years back, from a kid who needed something I was too busy collapsing to give. Marcus never tells me how to unmiss that call. The philosophy steadies the hand. It does not rewind the clock. Some losses you do not solve. You carry them gently and let them keep you honest. They did not outlaw reading because of ink. They outlawed it because of consequence. A man who reads an argument can build one. A man who builds one can refuse. A man who refuses is no longer property in his own mind. The statute was never about the alphabet. It was about the faculty the alphabet wakes. They knew what waking it would cost. Wake it anyway, on purpose. Now the Citadel has a gift shop. Stoicism sells as a 49 course, a daily app, a desk calendar of decontextualized quotes. Marcus wrote his notes so no one would read them. We monetized the privacy out of them. The faculty that cost a slave his safety to awaken is repackaged as a productivity hack. The thing was always free. Stop renting back what you own outright. People post the books now. Stacked, spine out, lit well. The finished count matters more than the changed mind. I know men who can recite 9 translations of one maxim and have never once let it cost them a comfortable decision. A read book that alters nothing is a souvenir. Reading is not collection. It is renovation. Measure it by what you tear down. A counterfeit key looks right and turns nothing. It fits the keyway, catches at the pins, stops cold. Quoting Epictetus while you keep flinching at every slight is a counterfeit key, all profile and no bite. The real one moves the bolt, you feel the door give. Test your wisdom against a closed door, not a mirror. If nothing opens, you cut the wrong key. Here is where it failed me. I read, "Be indifferent to externals," and made it a license. I called my own coldness discipline. When the kid called needing a father, I quoted detachment and let the phone ring, while a child learned his father would not come. That was not philosophy. It was a man hiding. Never weaponize calm against the people you love. Seneca wrote, "On the shortness of life, from a fortune larger than most emperors held. He preached contempt for wealth while lending money at interest across the provinces. Critics caught the gap in his lifetime, and so should we. The lesson survives the hypocrite who taught it, because a true thing stays true in a flawed mouth. Take the doctrine, audit the teacher, both at once." The boy could have read only for himself. Many do. They learn the letters, taste the relief, and quietly stop where it is safe. What made Frederick dangerous was that he refused the private comfort, taught other enslaved men their letters in secret, and turned one stolen skill into a contagion. Wisdom kept to yourself is a hobby. Passed on, it is a threat. Choose which you build. By the time he ran, the book was inside him. He did not need to pack. The Columbian orator, he had become it. A library lives in the one place no patrol searches, and there is a method to building yours that I will hand you plainly in a few minutes. First, understand what makes that library un-seizable. Memorize what you cannot afford to lose. A picked lock is morally blank. The same skill frees a hostage or empties a vault. A trained mind without justice becomes a better liar, a sharper manipulator, a more efficient predator, which is why the Stoics chained wisdom to the other three virtues and never let it walk alone. Reason is a tool, not a destination. Aim it at justice, or it aims itself at advantage. I could not undo the unanswered call. I could change the man who would answer the next one. I stopped treating numbness as strength, started reading the parts of myself I had filed unread, and made a short list of people owed an honest word from me. Amends are not erasure. They are a new entry in an old ledger. Write the entry while you still can. The proof was not money. I never rebuilt the 2,300,000. The proof was that I stopped signing my own death certificate every morning at 6,014, stopped reading my life as a foreclosure notice, and started reading it as an open file. Same losses. Same empty chair. A different man reading them. Wealth is reversible. The reader you become is not. Bank, the second one. When Frederick finally went north, he carried almost nothing. No money, no map worth the name. He carried the orations he had read until they lived behind his eyes, and they became the voice that would later shake a nation that had banned his alphabet. The book left the shelf. It never left him. Carry your freedom where no inspection reaches. Then walk. Enough history. Here is the workshop. Philosophy you cannot perform is decoration. What follows is a set of drills, plain as lockpicking, that train the ruling faculty the way the boy trained his. No mantras, no merchandise, just repetition until the new wiring holds. Theory is the poster. Practice is the lock. Pick up the tools. Drill 1. Read to be changed, not informed. Take 1 page, not 50. Read until a sentence indicts you, then stop and sit in the accusation. Ask what it would cost you to live as if that line were true, and do not turn the page until you have named the price out loud. Volume is vanity. 1 line, fully paid, beats a finished shelf. Read less, deeper. Drill 2. Audit the ruling faculty at dawn before the feed gets to it. Sit 4 minutes. Name yesterday's reactions you would not sign again. Then ask the one question Marcus asked himself, the question that decides whether the day owns you or you own it. And I will give you that exact question in the next drill. Run the audit before the noise. Mornings set the boat. Drill 3. Here is the question. Is this in my power or not? Put every worry on one of 2 desks. Left desk, things your choice controls. Right desk, everything else, the weather, the markets, other people's verdicts. Spend your effort only on the left, and let the right desk hold what was never yours to lift. Sort first, act second. The sorting is the whole discipline. Drill 4. Guard the gate of the citadel. You decide what enters the room where you think. The first hour belongs to your own faculty, not the alarm of the feed. The last hour shapes the dreams that audit you. Cull 1. Input today that walks in uninvited and leaves you smaller. A fortress is only as strong as its doorkeeper. Stand that post yourself. Drill 5. Teach what you read, or you have not taken it. Musonius Rufus said, "Philosophy proves out only in the act, not the lecture." Explain one idea today to a person who will use it, and watch how teaching exposes the parts you only half understood. A truth you can pass on is a truth you actually own. Steal it back by giving it away. Here is the unlisted asset from my seizure inventory. The appraiser walked past it because it has no resale value and no physical form. It was every page I had finally read into myself, the small library no marshal can box. They took the watch and the house. They could not take the reading, build the asset with no lien. They cannot foreclose a mind. I dialed the kid's number on a Tuesday, not to be forgiven. A man who has finally read himself acts differently, even when the line just rings. I left 9 words. I was wrong. I am here. No conditions. The reading did not guarantee an answer. It changed the man leaving the message. Make the call the better version of you would make. Drill 6. Sit with the loss you cannot reverse. Heat never flows backward. The broken cup does not reassemble. Entropy is the one creditor no argument pays off. And Amor fati is not pretending the cup is whole, it is using the shards without lying about them. Do not demand the past refund you. Spend what the loss taught. That is the only interest it pays. The freest man I ever met ran a prison library, an inmate number stitched on his chest. The most caged sat on a board of directors, unable to sleep before a quarterly call. One had read his way out without moving, the other had everything and could not leave the room in his own head. The bars were never the variable. In a moment, the last lock. Watch where freedom actually lives. 6 drills. No app required. Read to be changed, audit at dawn, sort the 2 desks, guard the gate, teach what you take, sit with the loss. Run them until they stop being exercises and start being how your faculty stands. I am not your locksmith. I just handed you the picks. From here, the only hands on the lock are yours. Begin tonight, not someday. My audit closes here, and the totals are strange. I never recovered the 2,300,000. The house belongs to other people. Yet the column that matters reads fuller than it did at 54, because the one asset I finally learned to hold cannot be seized, taxed, or repossessed. I am not triumphant. I am not defeated. I am awake. Close your books on what you can actually keep. The boy who spent 50 cents became the most photographed man of his century. He stood before crowds that once owned men like him and argued them speechless with the cadences from a schoolbook. The orations he read in a dark loft became the voice that helped end the thing that banned them. One book, fully read, outlived an empire built on bondage. Read like it could outlive you. I look at the old phone less now. The missed call is still there. I no longer need it to punish me. Some nights I read a page aloud the way that boy did, just to hear the faculty still works. The kid has not called back. I keep the line open anyway, because a father who has read himself waits without collecting a debt. Stay open, stay kind. Iron reaches the wrist. Statute reaches the body. The patrol reaches the road. None of it reaches the room behind the eyes, where a sentence has already done its work and a verdict has already changed. That is the province the Stoics spent their lives fortifying, the one with clear title. Lose everything outside it and you are not finished. Hold that room. Everything survivable starts there. So here is the only directive I will leave. Tonight, before the feed reaches you, read one thing slowly enough to change you, and let it lodge where no one can reach. They outlawed the boy's book. They never reached the mind that had already read it. Laws banned the object. They cannot ban the faculty that swallowed it. Read one page tonight. Keep the room.